I found out my family quietly reassigned my inheritance to my brother because I chose a different life path than they wanted for me. The lawyer's office smelled like furniture polish and old money. I sat across from Gerald Thornton, 23 years practicing estate law, silver hair perfectly combed, reading glasses perched on his nose, and watched him slide a document across the mahogany desk. Mr. Whitmore, I'm afraid there's been a significant change to your grandfather's will that you need to be aware of. My grandfather had died 6 weeks earlier. The funeral had been massive, proper, everything the Whitmore family demanded. I'd flown in from Seattle, where I'd been teaching high school English for 3 years, making $38,000 annually and loving every minute of it. The document had my name at the top. Then I saw my brother's name, where mine should have been. $2.7 million in assets, the family lake house, the investment portfolio my grandfather had built over 50 years, all reassigned to Jeremy Whitmore, successful hedge fund manager, Princeton graduate, golden child who'd done everything right. I read it twice, 3 times. The words didn't change. When did this happen? My voice sounded distant, like it belonged to someone else. Thornton shifted in his leather chair, clearly uncomfortable. The codicil was added 14 months ago. Your grandfather came in with your father and uncle. They spent approximately 90 minutes discussing the changes. 14 months. I'd visited my grandfather every few weeks during that time. We'd sat on his porch drinking sweet tea, talking about books and baseball, and absolutely nothing about this. He'd never mentioned it. Not once. On what grounds? I asked. Thornton removed his glasses, cleaned them slowly. The codicil states that the inheritance should go to the family member who has pursued a path of financial stability and maintained family values consistent with the Whitmore legacy. He paused. Your career change to education was specifically cited as demonstrating a lack of commitment to building generational wealth. The room tilted slightly. I gripped the armrest to steady myself. I'm a teacher, I said. I teach Shakespeare to 16-year-olds who think Romeo and Juliet is a romantic comedy. I sponsor the debate team. Last year, one of my students got a full scholarship to Northwestern because I helped him with his college essay. That's my life. Thornton nodded sympathetically. I understand this is difficult, Mr. Whitmore. For what it's worth, your grandfather seemed conflicted during our meeting. Your father was quite insistent about the changes. Of course he was. My father, Richard Whitmore III, senior partner at Whitmore and Associates, who'd built his entire identity around the family name and the money that came with it. Who'd barely spoken to me since I'd turned down the position he'd arranged at Goldman Sachs 5 years ago. Who'd called my decision to teach a prolonged adolescent rebellion at Thanksgiving dinner in front of the entire family. I stood up, my legs somehow still functional. Can I contest this? Thornton's expression told me everything before he spoke. The codicil is legally sound. Your grandfather was of sound mind, multiple witnesses signed, everything was properly notarized. You could challenge it, but it would be expensive and unlikely to succeed. I drove to my parents' house in the Tesla I'd borrowed from my girlfriend. Their estate sprawled across 5 acres in Connecticut's wealthiest zip code, the kind of place where the driveway had better landscaping than most people's entire yards. My mother's Range Rover sat next to my father's Mercedes and Jeremy's Porsche. Family meeting, apparently. Nobody had bothered to tell me. I used my key, they hadn't changed the locks yet, small miracle, and walked into the living room where they were all gathered. My mother, Catherine, holding a crystal glass of Chardonnay. My father in his usual armchair, Wall Street Journal folded beside him. Jeremy on the couch, looking exactly like what he was, a 32-year-old man who'd never heard the word no in his life. They all turned when I entered. The silence was remarkable. Interesting day, I said, keeping my voice level. Had a meeting with Gerald Thornton. Learned some fascinating things about Grandpa's will. My mother's hand tightened around her wine glass. My father's expression didn't change. He'd perfected that courtroom poker face decades ago. Jeremy had the decency to look uncomfortable, but only for a second. Andrew, listen, my father started. 2.7 million, I interrupted. The lake house, everything, all reassigned because I became a teacher. I looked at each of them in turn. When exactly were you planning to tell me? Or were you just going to let me find out when the estate settled? My mother set down her glass. Sweetheart, you have to understand. Your grandfather was worried about your future. We all were. Are. You're 30 years old, making barely enough to afford rent, dating a woman who works at a nonprofit. Her name is Lisa, Mom. She's a social worker who helps homeless veterans, and I can afford rent just fine. In a studio apartment, Jeremy said quietly. In Seattle, where you're 1,000 miles from family. By choice, I said. I moved 1,000 miles away by choice because every time I come home, I get reminded that my life choices are considered failures by people who measure success exclusively in dollar signs. My father stood, all 6 feet 2 inches of inherited authority and expensive suits. Your grandfather built something remarkable, a legacy, wealth that could sustain this family for generations. You turned your back on it. I became a teacher. I didn't join a cult. You rejected every opportunity we gave you, he continued, his voice rising slightly, rare for him. The best schools, the best connections, a career path that could have set you up for life. Instead, you're teaching grammar to teenagers for poverty wages and acting like you're some kind of martyr. The anger that had been building since Thornton's office finally broke through. I'm not a martyr. I'm happy. I wake up every morning and go to a job I love. I help kids discover that they're smarter than they think they are. I make a difference in lives that actually need someone to care about them. When's the last time any of you could say that? Silence. Then my mother. We care about you, Andrew. This is about caring about you. No, I said. This is about punishment. This is about making sure I know exactly what it costs to disappoint you. Grandpa's inheritance wasn't just money. It was his way of saying he believed in us, that he trusted us to do something meaningful with what he'd built. You turned it into a weapon. Jeremy shifted on the couch. It wasn't like that. Grandpa wanted to make sure the money went to someone who would grow it, protect it. Someone like you, I said. Someone who went to Princeton, works on Wall Street, married the right kind of woman, lives in Connecticut. Someone who checked all the boxes. Yes, my father said simply. Someone who took the family seriously. I should have left then. Should have walked out and never looked back. But I needed them to understand what they'd done. Did Grandpa really want this? Or did you convince a dying man to rewrite his will because you were embarrassed that one of your sons chose purpose over profit? My father's jaw tightened. Your grandfather made his own decisions. With you whispering in his ear for 90 minutes in Thornton's office, 14 months ago. That was right after his first stroke, wasn't it? When he was weak, confused, probably scared about dying? Andrew, that's enough, my mother said sharply. But I was already pulling out my phone, scrolling through old text messages. I found what I was looking for, a message from 15 months ago, before the codicil. My grandfather's shaky typing, sent at 11 at night. Proud of you, kid. Teaching is noble work. Your grandmother would have loved seeing you with those students. Don't let anyone tell you different. I held up the phone, showed them the screen. This was a month before he changed the will. Does this sound like a man who thought I was a disappointment? Nobody answered. I'm going to ask one more time, I said quietly. Did Grandpa initiate these changes, or did you? The look that passed between my parents was answer enough. We did what we thought was best for the family, my father said finally. For all of us, including you. Sometimes people need to face consequences to understand their mistakes. Teaching isn't a mistake. It's my life. It's a phase, my mother said. You're still young enough to course correct, go back to school, get an MBA. I don't want an MBA. I want my inheritance that my grandfather intended for me before you manipulated him into changing it. Jeremy stood up. Andrew, come on. You're making this sound worse than it is. The money's staying in the family either way. It's not like it's going to strangers. It's going to you, I said. Only you. That's the whole point. They're rewarding you for being what they wanted and punishing me for choosing differently. Don't pretend you don't see that. He had the grace to look away. I turned back to my parents. I'm going to contest the will. You'll lose, my father said. Thornton already told you it's airtight. Maybe. But I'll make sure everyone knows what you did. Every detail. Every conversation. The fact that you pressured a dying man to disinherit his grandson because that grandson had the audacity to become a teacher. My mother's face went pale. You wouldn't. Watch me. I walked toward the door, then stopped. By the way, I'm going to visit Grandpa's old neighbors this week. The Chamberlains, the Davidsons, Mrs. Fletcher who used to bring him soup. I'm going to tell them all about this. They might be interested to know how his final wishes were really handled. That's blackmail, my father said coldly. No, that's transparency. You wanted consequences? Here they are. I left before they could respond. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely get the car key in the ignition. I sat in the driveway for 5 minutes, trying to breathe normally, trying to process what had just happened. My phone buzzed. Lisa. How'd it go? I stared at the message, trying to figure out how to explain that my family had stolen my future and thought they were doing me a favor. Finally, I just called her. They really did it, I said when she answered. They got him to change the will, and they're not even sorry. Her voice was gentle, steady. Everything I needed right then. Come home. We'll figure this out. I don't know if there's anything to figure out. Thornton said the will is solid. I'd need proof that they coerced him or that he wasn't mentally competent, and I don't have either. Then we find it, she said, or we accept it and build our life anyway. But you don't have to decide tonight. I drove to my grandfather's house instead of the hotel. The estate executor had given me a key weeks ago, said I could visit whenever I wanted before the property officially transferred. The house was exactly as he'd left it. Books everywhere, photographs on every surface, the smell of pipe tobacco still lingering in his study. I sat in his favorite chair and looked around at a lifetime of memories. The photo of him and my grandmother on their wedding day, the trophy from his college baseball championship, the picture of me at 8 years old, holding up a fish I'd caught at the lake house, Grandpa's arm around my shoulders. That little kid had no idea his family would eventually quantify his worth in dollar signs and find him wanting. I started going through his desk, not sure what I was looking for. Bank statements, old letters, photographs. Then I found the journal, leather-bound, worn at the edges, filled with my grandfather's careful handwriting. The last entry was dated 2 months before he died. Richard came by again today. 3rd time this month. Keeps talking about Andrew, about responsibility, about the family legacy. He wants me to change the will. Says Andrew needs to understand there are consequences to his choices. I don't know. The boy is happy. Isn't that what matters? His grandmother always said the only real failure is living a life that makes you miserable. Andrew isn't miserable. Jeremy is successful, yes, but he's not happy. You can see it in his eyes. Richard doesn't understand that, or doesn't want to. I'm tired. The medication makes it hard to think clearly. Richard says he'll help me talk to Thornton, make sure everything is handled properly. Maybe he's right. Maybe I'm being sentimental. But when Andrew visited last week, we talked about his students. The way his face lit up when he described helping some kid finally understand Hamlet. That's real wealth, isn't it? I wish I could ask Catherine what she thinks. She'd know what to do. I read it 3 times, my heart hammering. This was evidence. Not legal evidence, maybe, but moral evidence. Proof that my grandfather had doubts, that my father had pressured him, that the changes weren't really what he wanted. I took photos of every page, backed them up to 3 different cloud services, then kept reading. There were more entries about my father's visits, about the pressure, about my grandfather's confusion and exhaustion. He'd been sick, medicated, grieving my grandmother who'd died just 6 months before the codicil was signed. He'd been vulnerable, and my father had exploited that. My phone buzzed again. Jeremy, can we talk? Just you and me? I almost ignored it, but curiosity won. Where? Grandpa's lake house. I'm here now. Needed to think. I drove the 30 minutes to the lake, the journal still in my hands. The house sat on 3 acres of prime waterfront, the same place where we'd spent every summer as kids. Jeremy's Porsche was parked in the gravel driveway. I found him on the dock, sitting with his feet dangling over the water, holding a beer. He didn't turn when I approached. Remember when we were kids? He said. We'd spend all day out here, swimming, fishing, building forts in the woods. Everything was simple. Nothing's simple anymore, I said, sitting down beside him. He handed me a beer from the 6-pack next to him. We sat in silence for a while, watching the sun sink toward the tree line. I didn't want this, Jeremy said finally. The will thing. I told Dad it was wrong. But you didn't stop it. I tried. You don't know what he's like when he's made up his mind about something. He had all these arguments, all this logic about family responsibility and legacy preservation. Mom backed him up. What was I supposed to do? Say no, I said simply. Tell them you wouldn't accept an inheritance that was stolen from your brother. He winced at the word stolen. It's not stolen. Grandpa signed the papers. After Dad spent months manipulating him while he was grieving and sick and probably didn't know which way was up. I pulled out my phone, showed him the photos of the journal entries. He read them slowly, his expression darkening. Where did you find this? Grandpa's desk. He wrote down everything. Every conversation, every doubt, every time Dad pushed him toward changing the will. It's all there. Jeremy handed the phone back. This doesn't prove coercion. Not legally. I know, but it proves the truth. Grandpa didn't really want to disinherit me. He was pressured into it by Dad, and he was too tired and sick to fight back. My brother drained his beer, crumpled the can. So, what are you going to do? I don't know yet. Contest the will? Probably lose. Tell everyone who'll listen what really happened. Make sure Dad's country club friends know he bullied his dying father into rewriting his will. Nuclear option. That'll destroy the family, Jeremy said quietly. The family destroyed itself when they decided my career choice was grounds for disinheritance. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, what if I give you half? I turned to look at him. What? The inheritance. What if I give you half of it? Not legally, not through the will, that's too complicated. But just a transfer, clean and simple. 1.35 million, half the assets, co-ownership of this house. We split everything the way Grandpa probably intended before Dad got involved. I stared at him, trying to figure out if he was serious. Why would you do that? Because it's the right thing to do. Because you're my brother and this whole situation is fucked up. Because I have enough money already. The hedge fund pays me $800,000 a year. I have stock options, investments. I don't need Grandpa's money. You, on the other hand, are making $38,000 teaching kids about Shakespeare. You could actually use it. Dad will lose his mind, I said. Probably. But it's my inheritance now, right? I can do whatever I want with it. He looked at me directly for the first time since I'd arrived. I'm not Dad, Andrew. I don't think your life is a failure. I think you're braver than I ever was. I took the safe path, the expected path, and yeah, I'm successful. But I spend 60 hours a week managing other people's money and I can't remember the last time I felt proud of myself. You help kids. You make a difference. That matters. I didn't know what to say. I'd come here expecting a fight, and instead, my brother was offering me half of everything. I need to think about it, I said finally. Take your time. I'm not going anywhere. We sat on the dock until dark, drinking beer and not talking much, just being brothers again for the first time in years. When I finally left, he walked me to my car. "Hey, Andrew?" "Yeah?" "Whatever you decide about the money, don't let Dad win. Don't let him make you think your life isn't valuable just because it doesn't fit his definition of success. You're doing exactly what you should be doing." I drove back to the hotel with my head spinning. Jeremy's offer was generous, unexpected, and probably genuine. But accepting it felt wrong somehow, like I'd be letting my parents off the hook for what they'd done. The next morning, I called Lisa. "Jeremy offered to split the inheritance with me." "That's wonderful. Andrew, I don't know if I should take it." Silence on the other end. Then, "Why not?" "Because it feels like accepting defeat, like I'm admitting that what they did was okay as long as I get some money out of it." "Or," Lisa said gently, "it's accepting that Jeremy is trying to do the right thing, and that you deserve what your grandfather wanted you to have. This isn't about your parents anymore. It's about you and your brother making things right." She was right. I knew she was right. But the anger was still there, burning in my chest, demanding some kind of reckoning. "I want them to admit what they did," I said. "I want my father to acknowledge that he manipulated Grandpa, that he used the inheritance as a weapon to punish me for living my own life." "Do you think he ever will?" "No." "Then you have to decide what matters more. Getting an apology you'll never receive, or accepting the gift your brother is offering and moving forward with your life." I spent the rest of the day walking around the city where I grew up, thinking about everything that had happened. I walked past my old elementary school, the park where we used to play, the library where I'd discovered my love of reading. This place had shaped me, but it didn't own me anymore. I called Jeremy that evening. "I'll accept your offer, on one condition." "Name it." "We use some of the money to set up a scholarship fund in Grandpa's name, for students who want to pursue teaching or other public service careers, students whose families might not understand or support their choices. We make it big enough to actually matter." There was a pause, then I heard him laugh, the real laugh I remembered from when we were kids. "Grandpa would love that. Absolutely yes. Let's do it. And one more thing. We tell Mom and Dad exactly what we're doing and why. They don't get to pretend this didn't happen. Deal. When do you want to do this?" "Tonight. At the house. Both of us together." 2 hours later, we were back in our parents' living room. They looked surprised to see us together, more surprised when we sat down side by side on the couch like a united front. "Jeremy and I have made some decisions about the inheritance," I started. My father's expression was wary. "What kind of decisions?" "I'm transferring half of everything to Andrew," Jeremy said. $1.35 million, half the assets, co-ownership of the lake house, and we're setting up a scholarship fund in Grandpa's name for students pursuing careers in teaching and public service." My mother actually gasped. My father's face went red. "You can't do that. That money was meant—" "For me," Jeremy interrupted. "It's my inheritance now, legally. I can do whatever I want with it. And this is what I want." "You're making a mistake," my father said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "You're letting Andrew manipulate you into giving away your inheritance." "Nobody's manipulating anyone," I said. "Unlike how you manipulated Grandpa into changing his will in the first place." I pulled out my phone, started reading from the journal entries. My grandfather's words, his doubts, his descriptions of my father's pressure and persistence. My mother's face went pale. My father stood up, paced to the window. "Those are private thoughts. You had no right." "He was my grandfather too," I said. "And his private thoughts make it very clear that changing the will wasn't his idea. It was yours. You spent months wearing him down while he was sick and grieving, until he was too tired to fight back. I did what was necessary to protect this family's future. You did what was necessary to punish me for embarrassing you. That's what this has always been about. Not the family legacy, not generational wealth, just your ego. You couldn't stand that one of your sons chose a different path, so you made sure I knew exactly what that choice would cost." My father turned to Jeremy. "You're really going to let him destroy everything I've built? Everything this family stands for?" "This family stands for a lot of things," Jeremy said quietly. "But it shouldn't stand for punishing people for choosing meaningful work over money. Andrew's not wrong. Dad, you did pressure Grandpa. I was there for some of those conversations. I saw how it went." "Then you're both fools," my father said coldly. "When you realize what you've thrown away, don't come crying to me." "We won't," I said, standing up. "Come on, Jeremy. We have lawyers to meet with in the morning." We left together. In the driveway, my brother turned to me. "That went better than I expected." He didn't throw anything. I count that as a win. We shook hands, then Jeremy pulled me into a hug. "I'm sorry," he said, "for all of it, for not standing up sooner, for letting them do this in the first place. You deserved better." "We both did," I said. The next 3 months were a blur of legal paperwork, financial transfers, and family drama. My parents tried everything to stop Jeremy from giving me the money. Threats, guilt trips, bringing in other relatives to apply pressure. None of it worked. The scholarship fund was established with $500,000 in seed money, the Whitmore Foundation for Future Educators. We set the criteria. Students from families who opposed their career choice, students pursuing teaching or public service, students who demonstrated passion over prestige. We'd fund 10 full scholarships per year, plus mentorship and support throughout college. The first recipient was a kid named David Reeves from Ohio. His parents wanted him to be a doctor. He wanted to teach history to underprivileged kids. His essay about fighting for his dreams while dealing with family pressure made both Jeremy and me cry. We called him personally to tell him he'd won. He cried too. The inheritance transfer went through without legal issues. $1.35 million appeared in my account on a Wednesday morning in March. I stared at the number for a long time, trying to process it. I was a millionaire who still taught English to teenagers and lived in a studio apartment. Lisa and I decided to keep living simply. We upgraded to a 2-bedroom apartment with a real kitchen, bought a decent car to replace the beater I'd been driving, set up college funds for the kids we might have someday. The rest got invested conservatively. We weren't trying to build generational wealth, just security and freedom to keep doing work we loved. I did buy one extravagant thing, a first edition of my grandfather's favorite book, Lonesome Dove. Cost me $8,000. Worth every penny. I kept it in a glass case in my classroom, and when students asked about it, I told them the story. My parents stopped speaking to both of us. My mother tried to maintain some contact through strained phone calls and birthday cards, but my father cut us off completely. We weren't mentioned at family events, weren't invited to holidays. Other relatives took sides, some with us, some with my parents, most trying to stay neutral and awkwardly changing the subject whenever the inheritance came up. I didn't care as much as I thought I would. The family I'd lost had stopped being my family years ago, when they made it clear that their love came with conditions, and their approval required me to abandon everything that made me who I was. 6 months after the inheritance transferred, I got a call from Mrs. Fletcher, my grandfather's elderly neighbor. "Andrew, dear, I found something I think you should have." I drove to Connecticut that weekend. Mrs. Fletcher invited me in for tea, then handed me a small wooden box. "Your grandfather gave this to me 2 weeks before he died. Said if anything happened to him, I should make sure you got it." I didn't understand at the time, but after hearing about the will situation from the Chamberlains, I think I do now. Inside the box was a letter, sealed in an envelope with my name on it. My grandfather's handwriting. I waited until I was alone in the car to open it. "Dear Andrew, if you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you've probably discovered what happened with the will. I'm sorry, kid. I'm so sorry. Your father convinced me to make those changes, and I was too weak and tired to fight him the way I should have. He wore me down with logic and family duty and guilt about letting you waste your potential. But here's the truth I couldn't seem to make him understand. You're not wasting anything. You're living exactly the life you should be living. You're making a difference in ways that matter. Money is just money, kid. It comes and goes. But the impact you have on those students, that lasts forever. If I could redo the will, I would. But I'm too sick now, too confused, and your father has all the lawyers on his side. So instead, I'm leaving you this letter and hoping it means something. You don't need my money to prove your worth. You don't need my approval to validate your choices. You are exactly who you should be, doing exactly what you should be doing. Your grandmother would be so proud. I'm proud too, even if I let your father convince me to show it poorly. Be happy, Andrew. That's all that really matters. Love, Grandpa." I sat in the car and sobbed, ow, ugly, gasping, years of pain and anger and love all mixed together. He'd known. He'd known what he was doing was wrong, and he'd tried in his last weeks to make it right the only way he could. I drove to the cemetery, sat by his grave, and read the letter out loud. "I forgave you a long time ago," I told him, "before I even knew there was anything to forgive. You were trying your best in an impossible situation. That's all any of us can do." The scholarship fund grew. Jeremy and I both contributed regularly, and we recruited other donors who believed in the mission. By the end of the first year, we'd given out 15 full scholarships instead of 10. By the end of the second year, we'd expanded to include students pursuing social work, nonprofit management, and other careers where passion outweighed profit. One of our scholars, a girl named Rebecca Liu, who wanted to teach special education despite her parents' insistence she become a lawyer, sent us a letter after her first year of college. "I used to think I had to choose between my family and my dreams. Your scholarship showed me that there are people who believe both are possible, who think my dreams are worth supporting even if my family doesn't understand them yet. Thank you for seeing value in a path that doesn't lead to wealth or prestige. Thank you for believing that teachers and helpers and caregivers matter. You changed my life." We framed that letter, hung it in Jeremy's office right next to our grandfather's photo. My relationship with Jeremy strengthened in ways I never expected. We talked weekly, visited each other regularly, became actual friends instead of just brothers who shared DNA and childhood memories. He started volunteering with my debate team when he visited Seattle, using his business experience to help students understand economics and finance. The kids loved him. One weekend, he showed up unexpectedly at my apartment. "I quit the hedge fund," he announced. Lisa and I stared at him. "You what?" "Quit. Gave notice last week. I'm starting a financial literacy nonprofit to help low-income families build wealth and avoid predatory lending. It's going to pay me about $60,000 a year, which is a massive pay cut. But I don't care. I want to do something that matters." I hugged him. Dad's going to have an aneurysm. Dad already had an aneurysm, metaphorically speaking. He called me a traitor, said I was throwing away everything he'd built, accused you of corrupting me with your poverty mindset. What did you say? I said thank you, because you showed me that success isn't measured in dollars, and I'd rather be proud of my work than rich and miserable. He looked at me seriously. I'm not going to pretend I did this alone. Watching you live your values inspired me to actually examine mine. You were right all along. 3 years after the inheritance transfer, I got a letter from an attorney I didn't recognize. Inside was a formal notice that my father was suing both Jeremy and me for undue influence and fraudulent transfer of assets. He was claiming that we'd manipulated him and our mother, stolen family wealth, and violated the spirit of our grandfather's wishes. The lawsuit was baseless, and everyone knew it, including my father's own lawyers, who looked deeply uncomfortable during the preliminary hearing. The judge dismissed it within 10 minutes, calling it a transparent attempt to weaponize the legal system for personal grievances. My father's attorney apologized to us in the hallway afterward. I advised against this. For what it's worth, I think what you two did with the scholarship fund is remarkable. Your grandfather would be proud. We never heard from my father again after that. But 6 months later, my mother called. Can we meet? Just you and me? We met at a coffee shop near my old high school. She looked older, tired, like the past few years had worn her down. I'm sorry, she said without preamble. For all of it. For pressuring your grandfather, for supporting your father's obsession with making you conform, for not standing up for you when it mattered. You deserved better from me. I didn't know what to say. Why now? I asked finally. Because I'm getting divorced. Your father and I have been separated for 8 months. The lawsuit was the final straw, watching him try to destroy his own sons over money and pride. I couldn't do it anymore. She took a shaky breath. And because your grandfather visited me in a dream last week. I know that sounds crazy, but he was so clear. He said I needed to fix what I'd broken before it was too late. We talked for 2 hours. She cried. I cried. We didn't fix everything. Some damage runs too deep for a single coffee shop conversation. But we started. She met Lisa officially, not as the non-profit worker who wasn't good enough for her son, but as the woman I loved. She visited my classroom, saw me teach, met some of my students. You're good at this, she said afterward, sounding surprised. Really good. I never knew. You never asked, I said gently. She nodded. I'm asking now. Tell me about your life. The real version, not the one I invented to make myself feel better about my choices. So I did. I told her about the student who'd been functionally illiterate when he entered my class and graduated reading at college level. About the girl who'd written a novel during our creative writing unit and got it published. About the debate team winning state championships 3 years running. About the kids who came back after graduation to tell me I'd changed their lives. My mother listened to all of it, really listened, and when I finished, she said, I'm so sorry I missed this. I'm so sorry I tried to make you into something you weren't, instead of celebrating who you are. We started having lunch once a month, then twice a month. She attended the Scholarship Fund's annual gala, donated generously, helped us recruit other donors from her social circle. Some of her friends were horrified that she was supporting an organization that encouraged young people to become teachers instead of bankers. She told them all exactly where they could go. Jeremy's nonprofit took off. Within 2 years, he was helping over 5,000 families annually, teaching financial literacy classes in community centers, partnering with schools to provide education on managing money and avoiding debt. He won awards, got featured in the New York Times, became exactly the kind of successful that had nothing to do with his bank account and everything to do with his impact. My father saw the article. He sent Jeremy one text. You could have been running a hedge fund worth billions. Instead, you're playing social worker for poor people. What a waste. Jeremy showed me the text, and we both laughed. Because we'd learned something our father never understood. The only waste is spending your life doing something that doesn't matter to you just because other people think you should. Last month, the Scholarship Fund gave out its 100th full scholarship. We held a special ceremony, invited all our scholars, the ones who'd graduated, the ones still in school, everyone who'd been part of this thing we'd built from anger and inheritance and a dying man's regret. Rebecca Liu spoke, now a special education teacher in Chicago, with a classroom full of kids who adored her. David Reeves spoke, teaching history in an under-resourced school in Cleveland and loving every minute. One by one, they shared their stories of fighting for their dreams, of facing down family pressure, of choosing meaning over money. At the end, Jeremy and I stood up together. Our grandfather built something important in his life, I said. Not just wealth, but a legacy of caring about what matters. He taught us to work hard, to value family, to build something lasting. We're honoring that legacy, just not in the way everyone expected. The Whitmore name used to mean money and power and prestige, Jeremy continued. Now it means something different. It means believing in people who choose passion over profit. It means supporting dreams even when they don't make sense on paper. It means understanding that the best investment you can make is in someone else's potential. We raised a glass to our grandfather, to second chances and stolen inheritances turned into something beautiful. To families that love you despite your choices, and brothers who stand beside you when it matters. To teachers and helpers and caregivers and everyone else who makes the world better without getting rich doing it. My phone buzzed during the reception. A text from an unknown number. I almost deleted it, then saw the message. This is your father. I made mistakes. Many mistakes. I'm not asking for forgiveness. Just wanted you to know I saw the article about the scholarship fund. Your grandfather would be proud. I should have told you that a long time ago. I showed Jeremy. He read it, handed the phone back. What are you going to do? Nothing, I said. Some apologies come too late to matter, but at least he said it. We spent the rest of the night celebrating with our scholars, with Lisa and Jeremy's wife Michelle, with my mother who'd become one of the fund's biggest supporters, with all the people who'd chosen to be our family not because of blood or obligation, but because of shared values and mutual respect. I thought about the kid I used to be, sitting on my grandfather's porch, drinking sweet tea and talking about books. He'd wanted me to be happy. That's what the letter said. Be happy. That's all that really matters. I looked around the room at 100 students who were pursuing their dreams because we'd given them permission and support. At my brother who'd walked away from millions to do work that fulfilled him. At the woman I loved who spent her days helping veterans find housing and hope. At my mother who'd finally chosen her sons over her husband's approval. I was happy. Not because of the money, though financial security helped. Not because I'd won some battle against my father or proved him wrong, though there was satisfaction in that. I was happy because I'd built a life that mattered, surrounded myself with people who valued what I valued, and turned my grandfather's complicated legacy into something purely, powerfully good. The inheritance my father tried to steal had become something better than he could have imagined. Not wealth that sat in accounts earning interest, but wealth that moved through the world, creating opportunity and hope. Every scholarship was a middle finger to everyone who thought teaching was a waste. Every graduate was proof that passion and purpose matter more than prestige. Every life changed was a vindication of the choice I'd made at 25 to walk away from Goldman Sachs and toward a classroom full of teenagers who needed someone to believe in them. Be happy, my grandfather had written. That's all that really matters. He was right. And I am. If you enjoyed this, you'll definitely want to see the next ones too. So subscribe now and let me know your take in the comments.